All right, welcome everyone to the House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs. We're here on Tuesday, April 11th, to hear introductions of a couple more charter bills as we're doing some work behind the scenes on others. And H504 is up first. This is approval of amendments to the charter of the town of Berlin. So Tucker, welcome back.
Good afternoon, everyone. For the record, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel. We have in front of you H504, approval of amendments to the charter of the town of Berlin. The charter amendments do two things. The first is to shift the town clerk from an elected position to an appointed position. And the second is to amend the town's inventory tax application and provide for a waiver under certain circumstances. Section 1, as with all of the other charters, approves the amendments as they were passed by the voters. Approved the proposals of amendment on November 8th, 2022. Section 2 amends the charter in Chapter 105 of Title 24 Appendix. First, in Section 42, and we are on page 2, line 9, by striking the town clerk from the list of elected officers. Moving on to page 3, in section 44, the town clerk is added as an appointed officer. You will note that there's no term set into the charter amendments here, so hopefully something that the committee does not have to amend or work with forward. Section 73, this deals with penalties for delinquent installment payments for certain taxes. And what the town is doing here is providing for a waiver of the application of the town's personal property or inventory tax when that inventory or personal property is below a certain threshold value. Subsection C states that when the total assessed value of personal property or inventory is equal to or less than $1,650, the town treasurer, with approval of the select board, may waive the application of that tax. Would you like quick background on personal property inventory tax?
What you were going to ask her? Yep.
I think so, but.
So personal property inventory taxes are largely gone. Most municipalities no longer apply the personal property or inventory tax, but it would apply, again, mostly to commercial enterprises and the inventory they keep for purposes of their business. For the most part, these only exist in charters now. And here, the town is proposing that anything that's valued at less than $1,650 can be waived by the treasurer and the select board and won't be subject to this tax.
Representative Higley, and then
You may have the same question.
So Tucker, it's not the value, it's the tax in this particular case, right? We have a value in Lowell of $10,000. And so the tax would be, of course, substantially less than that. But this says that the tax would be $1,650, correct?
So the clause is when the total assessed value of personal property or inventory taxation. The way that clause is constructed, this is the value of the actual objects, right, of the personal property. I will admit I was confused at the use of the term taxation in this particular amendment instead of just leaving it as inventory. So maybe that's something the committee would want to ask the town about, whether the intent was the value of the tax or the value of the actual inventory.
Because again, that $16,500 is $1,650 isn't very much. I mean, it wouldn't. We did it to alleviate, a small business that had a engine repair shop that had some,
It's
property to keep it from, having to go with that business person property tax. But anyway, it's just curious to me that if it is based on the actual value of the personal property, that seems like a very low number. Thanks.
Representative Morgan.
Okay, so just to be crystal clear on it, Tucker, it's nothing to do with like when we convene boards of civil authority to forgive like what I call bits and pieces. We'll go in periodically, the treasurer will come in and go, Seth Chase owes $1.25 on this, Bob Uber owes $1.73. These aren't even worth us sending a letter on. We're just, those are gone. Nothing remotely tied to that, correct?
Correct. What you're discussing is the procedures for abatement of de minimis
Correct.
amounts of taxes,
Correct.
which is done by the
So
Board of Abatement.
completely divorced from that. And second, you sort of got to it, but maybe I didn't hear you correctly. Can you cite an example of something? Did you anticipate that question?
I did not, but the last time that I worked on inventory tax, it was actually a repeal from a charter of the inventory tax. The inventory that was discussed in that committee hearing was the town in that instance was taxing the shelves and other inventory structures inside of a retail grocery store. So if you can think of any fixture, machine, something like that that would be used in a commercial enterprise, yeah.
Okay.
I heard an example prior to the meeting that it might include, for example, tools and machinery used in a bakery. So
Fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Representative Chase.
You said they can waive it. Is that a may or a shall?
it is a may. Upon approval of the select board, may waive.
Oh, May, yeah.
All right, section 3, you have another transitional provision similar to the other elected to appointed officer changes you've done over the last few weeks. This states that any elected town clerk in office shall continue to serve until the end of the clerk's term or an earlier date that the select board appoints a town clerk. Now, why doesn't it reference an elected town clerk? Based on some digging and background research when the bill was coming together, the town told me they have already appointed a clerk. So there's no elected clerk in the town right now.
So, yeah, sorry to clog it up here, but with that said, in the last couple that we've had that are very similar to these, should we have clarity in there that it's an indefinite, I assume that's the case, it's an indefinite period they're looking for, or is that already presumptive in this, the way this is written?
The way that transitional provision is written, it can be indefinite.
Okay.
This is giving them coverage for the current appointment and any future appointment.
Okay, so serve at the pleasure.
And no elected officers being ousted here, so it doesn't have to
Right.
name a term.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about the words on the page? Thank you very much, Tucker. Representative Goslant and Representative Donahue, would you like to come up together as a delegation? Yes. Welcome.
He's not leaving, is he? We need him.
He's around for this one and the next bill we're hearing the intro on, so. You're safe. I always feel better when Tucker's here as well. Would you please introduce yourselves for the record and tell us a little bit about the charter change story from your community?
Representative Van Donahue.
Representative Ken Goslant, Northfield, Berlin.
So as was referenced by Legislative Council, this came to the voters of Berlin in November. There were actually 3 articles that they voted on. One was a local options tax, which was voted down. The second was specific to the town clerk position, which passed 564 to 543. And the third was the article on the tax that I had never heard of before reading it in the charter there, which passed 784 to 354. So we're happy to bring this forward to you to respect the wishes of the town of Berlin and 568, I probably copied that wrong. 568 to 543 and 139 blank balance.
That was on the town.
That was on the town clerk, right? Yep.
Fix the emotions.
So, any questions from the committee?
Straightforward.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask what the conversation was like in the community in terms of like, was there robust participation from people? Did people attend the informational meetings, or was this kind of more driven by the select board? And or do you have a sense of kind of how the charter proposals came together?
I think a lot of the focus has been for a number of years. They've tried before to do the local options tax. That's been an ongoing robust discussion. If you add-
The town clerk thing was, it's been an ongoing situation. And the biggest thing they're trying to do is improve the ability to hire the best qualified candidate, which you're probably hearing in testimony all the time here. That's really what this is all about. And that was a lot of discussion that's been going on for a long time, and there was 139 that just left it blank. So it's something that I feel in my inner workings with dealing with municipalities that it's probably the right thing to do.
I'm sure you've seen on the floor that many communities that have charters are doing this, and we also, I think Tucker could speak to this with more expertise, but we have previously passed the ability for towns that don't have a charter to go ahead and move toward an appointed clerk. So it's one of those things where it seems like many towns are going that way, but I understand that there are a lot of voters who see, wait a minute, we're getting rid of an elected office and going to appoint one.
Yeah, and I think the vote reflects that there was a lot of uncertainty, but, it was a majority that felt it was the right way to go, but.
Was there any discussion, in your conversations with people about that amount on the exemption piece for the inventory tax and how that was chosen? Do you have any sense of the history on that?
I actually don't. We did get just today the batch of, the minutes of all the select board meetings on this, and I have not gone through them. So I wondered that myself. I don't know why that amount was chosen.
One of the things that's most disappointing that I think we all face in town meetings is the lack of participation that's there. And both Representative Donahue and I was there, and there was, 15 people maybe that actually participated. So.
Right at the March, town meeting, so. And obviously the voter turnout was not huge in November, so.
Representative Higley.
Do you folks know what your non-residential tax is in town there?
No, but could easily find out for you.
I'm wondering if it's around $1.65.
Oh,
That makes some sense.
yeah, that makes sense.
Oh. Okay, now we'll find that out.
Probably.
And we can just ask Vince also, why did they pick that number?
If you want more questions or more answers, I can get Vince on the phone right now for you if you want, but it's up to you.
I think if we could get that information, and maybe if there was somebody from the town that wanted to weigh in, either send us an email or zoom in or come in for a few minutes before we move things along. I know this, because it has this tax provision in it, the bill will have to stop on Ways and Means as well, assuming we get it out of here successfully. So there's plenty of time for us, I think, to get the information before we move the bill completely on its way. It does seem like a really low amount, but that kind of makes sense. I think this is an old number, but it looks like in the last couple of years, the non-homestead rate was in the mid 150s in Berlin. So probably by now is about at that rate. So Representative Higley may be correct with that speculation, but it would be great to just understand what the thinking was behind that provision before we move.
And also to get the explicit answer as to whether it was intended to be the tax versus the property.
We can clarify that with a change and just make sure we're
Reflecting the intent.
intended to have us through.
Yep.
Vince was trying to get here for this meeting. Let me just check my phone and see if he's in the building, and he doesn't know where we are.
Oh,
Want to make sure we haven't left anybody out.
wandering around looking for,
I didn't hear from him, so. But he'd be more than happy to come in and do whatever you'd like, when you'd like, so.
Yeah, I think unless the committee has any specific concerns, I might put this on for Thursday, late morning, when we're done doing some of our work on S32.
Do a wrap up.
Should have some time to take up a couple of these charters that don't seem to have a huge amount of policy stuff and get them moved. So I would say if he wants to come in or Zoom in on Thursday morning, we could probably squeeze that in, or just get an email with the clarification. Suffice.
sounds good.
Any other questions for our?
About what time do you think?
I would say 11:15 or 11:30, something like that. Based on trying to crystal ball, and Andrea's nodding her head here. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. Always got to check with our diligent committee assistant here. Keep the trains running on time. But yeah, Representative
If you want, I'm getting to be an expert at these town clerk appointments. I can grab that when it comes time if you'd like. It's right up my alley.
Like this.
In case you didn't hear the first three.
Some towns you're gonna have a lot of these, so.
Seems to be a theme, yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot more than typical, it seems. It's just been a big flow.
I mean, I think this particular thing about the clerk appointments, it's just about having somebody who is a resident in your area that wants to run for the job and is qualified to do it. In this day and age, it's
Not as easy.
it's not as easy as it used to be. Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We'll see if we can get your charter on its way later this week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. So next up, we've got H505, which is amendments to the charter of the city of Rutland. Should we do the repeat thing here? Our Representatives Howard and Knott, are you in a huge hurry? Should we hear from Legislative Council and then we'll bring you up? So. Get up H505 here.
Before jumping into 505, I wanted to make sure that I gave the committee the most accurate answer possible as to what is subject to the inventory tax.
Oh, okay.
Under general law in Title 32, inventory means tangible personal property of a non-depreciable nature held for consumption, sale, resale, leasing, or to be furnished under contracts of service in a trade or business, and includes raw materials, works in process, semi-furnished or finished goods of manufacturers and processors, and the stock in trade of wholesalers and retailers.
So something you can put your hand on.
It is non-depreciable, so it can't be depreciated under another tax statute.
Representative Chase.
So does that mean like an auto dealership, the cars wouldn't count?
Correct,
Okay.
I think. I don't know if cars at dealerships can be depreciated.
I'm going to be fascinated to see what Ways and Means has to say about H504.
And inventory taxes are applied based on a town vote. And then the town can go back later to either repeal on a town vote or to lower the percentage of the value of inventory that is subject to the tax from 100% down to whatever they would like. So the Berlin formula is something different than what is in general law, in that they appear to be exempting based on value rather than percentage.
So it looks, so I did a quick search on the tax website and it looked like as of a couple of years ago, there were maybe 25 towns or something like that that had some machinery and equipment or inventory tax. A lot of them exempt the inventory, which to your point, it's like if you're not the machinery and equipment, I remember like trying to figure out what the value of the equipment was in the bakery I used to own, because St. Albans City has a machinery and equipment tax but exempts the inventory.
The old days when the content.
Yeah. It was a very small tax. All right, well, let's leave that aside for now. Move on to Rutland's charter change. Thanks, Tucker.
H505 approves amendments to the charter of the city of Rutland. There is one amendment proposed here, and it is a local option tax. In section 1 states the General Assembly's approval. The voters approved the proposal amendment on March 7th, 2023. A new section 8.9 is added to the city's charter. In subsection A local option tax is authorized for the purpose of affording the city an alternative method of raising municipal revenues with the goal of lessening the impact of certain expenses on the property tax or water and sewer fees or both. So the city has chosen to build a purpose into the adoption and imposition of their local option tax. I'll note that the general law that governs local option taxes has something similar. And the purpose built into that statute is to defray lost revenue resulting from the transition in Act 60. Subsection B, the Board of Aldermen is authorized to assess a sales tax of 1%. Subsection C, it states that the tax, if it is imposed, shall be collected and administered by the Department of Taxes pursuant to General Law 24 VSA Section 138. We did this last week, but that's the 70-30 split, less the per return fees. Local option taxes are effective upon 90 days notice starting the first day of the next quarter following that notice. Okay. Clear as mud. Subsection D, revenues received through this tax shall only be used in the following ways. The city's restricting its use of the funds here. To deposit in any capital improvement reserve fund, to reduce the deficit in any underfunded pension, to finance construction, capital repair of city buildings, streets, sidewalks, or other infrastructure, or any combination of 1 through 3. And that is all that's within this charter proposal. This shall take effect on passage.
So this is just sales, no meals and alcohol.
The way it is written.
Yeah, interesting. All right, Representative Higley and then Representative Moore.
So Tucker, again, on this one, it appears that it's up to the Board of Aldermen to make that determination as to what this money could be used for. Is set in this system. It has to go first for this. Anything left over for this, I mean, they can determine.
Right, and they can choose the combination. And some municipalities choose to restrict their local option tax revenue in this way. It's not required. This could have all gone into the general fund, and the legislative body could have proposed a budget apportioning this amongst any other purposes, any number of projects that they had going on. So,
Okay, thanks.
It's the construction of the D, all of the above, in line 18, any combination of ways enumerated in the subsection. Is that the language that was presented to the voters?
The way that it was written on the ballot, and I'm going to try to shoot from the hip on memory here, is any of the ways described in subdivision 1, subdivision 2, or subdivision 3.
I guess what it means, it's just a really awkward construction.
The word ways was on the ballot, and in doing the Vermont statutes annotated technical cleanup of the charter proposal, I did not want to change the word ways as it was used on the ballot.
Okay.
In case I inadvertently changed the meaning by cleaning it up.
Far be it for me to question your good work, Tucker.
Please, question on the topic.
Representative Morgan.
Something I keep meaning to Google, but you're probably the subject matter to ask, and it's probably my naivety, and I should know this, is alderman, councilor, selectman. What delineates the differences on those three?
Not much in that they're all the legislative bodies of the given
Cities,
municipality. And they style the term for the legislative body differently, but they are all the
Interchangeable.
legislative body. Yeah,
Thank you.
yes.
I've always wondered that. Now I know.
The General Assembly has chosen uniform terms by and large for legislative bodies so that they are gender neutral. And alderman is the only term that exists that we do not have a neutral replacement for. So that's why alderman throughout Vermont statutes has not changed to this day.
We have started to say alderperson in the city of St. Albans,
Alderperson.
but I don't know if that's just something that we made up.
If a future legislative act directs Ledge Council to change all references from alderman to alderperson, then we will, and that will become the standard term.
All right. Any questions for Tucker about the words on the page before we hear from our Rutland reps? Thank you very much, Tucker. Representatives Knott and Howard, would you like to come up together as a delegation?
Sure.
Would you like to introduce yourselves to the record and tell us a little bit about how 505 came to be?
I am Representative Mary Howard, and I represent Rutland District 6. Not exactly sure how it began. Probably Representative Knott can tell you. I'm sure there was a lot of discussion about wouldn't this be a good idea since we are surrounded by Rutland Town, which has had the 1% increase for years. In addition, Rutland City can use the extra money. My constituents supported this charter change because they are maxed out on property taxes, and they are hopeful that some of the costs of running our city will be shared by those who access our stores and who shop in Rutland City. Rutland is at a crossroads. There is a new mayor, new leaders, and a great sense of hope and energy that they will have here to resources they need to address long, steady issues such as the ones this revenue will be directed towards. I urge the committee to support this change. I will turn it over to Representative Knott. If there are any questions?
I'm Representative Will Knott. I represent Rutland 7, which is the northwest quarter, more or less, of Rutland City. And so Rutland City, in a lot of ways, is a microcosm of the state in that there are some issues that need to be fixed that are, the fixes are largely financial in nature. We ignored our infrastructure for about a century. And there are still one or two water pipes in the ground in Rutland City that predate the Civil War. And we are slowly working to improve that. The voters of Rutland City have approved over $10 million in bonding to work on our infrastructure, storm sewer separation, roads, sewers over the past decade. But the voters can only afford so much in a given year. Rutland has a fairly high tax rate for local taxes. I'll also say that until 5-6 years ago, Rutland City also operated its own pension for city employees. And much like at the state level, that went off the tracks. So it no longer operates its own city pension, but we still have employees who predate when we switched over to the state pension, and there's a gap there. So the city again did bonding to try and make that whole. An additional amount was introduced into the annual pension to try and make up the shortfall. But again, there's only so much the voters can do on any given fiscal year. So the idea of a 1% local options tax has been talked about pretty much since our neighbors in Rutland Town took one on about a decade ago, and has been kicked around as an idea to help bolster city finances without putting 100% of the burden on folks in the city. It is something that the Board of Aldermen worked on for quite some time before finally putting it before the voters. In the recent election where it was approved, we had a very vigorous mayor's race, and both candidates for mayor agreed that this was in the best interest of the city. They had declared beforehand that it was not going to be a campaign issue. They both supported it 100%. And I will just say that it passed on town meeting day 1,729 to 1,216. And our estimates are that it's going to generate between $1 to $1.5 million annually.
This one's a little more straightforward. We have seen it before. Any questions for our Rutland reps? I don't know how much more testimony we would need to hear on this, but I think what we'll do is also add it to the agenda for possible vote on our Thursday morning, so that we have a little bit of time for folks to speak up. But it sounded like a strong vote and a pretty typical set of restrictions on the dollars. So Representative Hango.
Thank you. Can you repeat the numbers that were the voting tallies?
Sure. In favor, 1,729. Opposed, 1,216.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought you said.
We had about a 25% turnout of registered voters for the election.
About par for the course these days.
Unfortunately.
March.
Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you, Representative Knott, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
So committee, we are, go ahead, Representative Chase.
Just for historical purposes, Alderman etymology, the one that's not bugs. The history of the word is old man. So alderman is
Old wise man.
older man.
Wise man.
Can I throw one thing in?
Yeah, wisdom isn't for
In the 1880s, Rutland City was forcibly split off from Rutland Town. It was a battle between the railroad interests and the marble interests. So Rutland City was created a municipality essentially against their will. And when we came up with city government, Rutland Town already had a select board, and Board of Aldermen just sounded fancier.
So it's a little bit of a.
And if you walk into City Hall now, there's people who use alderman, alderwoman, and alderperson. So it's a personal preference.
All kinds of stuff coming out here.
So committee, before we break for the afternoon, I had intentionally scheduled some time so that I would have some time to meet with Ledge Council about some things, and that folks looking at St. Johnsbury's charter would have the opportunity, or the Linden charter, et cetera. Representative Higley.
So I reached out to the town manager yesterday. He got back to me this morning. I met with Tucker. He's going to put together a flow chart of the concerns and, general law and whatever else, and I'm going to send that to him. He's going to sit down with some of the charter committee, and then come back.
I think that is excellent, to send them back our notes and have them respond. That sounds like a wonderful plan. Thank you very much, Representative Higley. Definitely pointed the right people to the subcommittee. Great. So we have a plan there. I had a brief conversation with one of the reps on the Linden-Lindenville charter, and one of the things on my to-do list today is to summarize notes on that so that similarly they can take a look. And I also know that Tucker was doing some follow-up work, which he probably hasn't heard back on yet, about the utility pieces, trying to get some information from the Ledge Council, who does more of the utility policy. So Tomorrow, we will be taking quite a bit of testimony on S-17, the sheriff's bill. And then we'll be looking at some of the ranked choice voting stuff on Thursday and a little bit on Friday. And my hope is that we are going to be able to kind of just keep doing policy work over the next couple of weeks and move a lot of this stuff when we're ready. But I want to make sure that we've heard from the people we need to hear from. And some of the things we're tackling right now in these Senate bills are pretty thorny. So I'm not in any huge rush, but we've got a couple of weeks to hear from the people we need to hear from and do the work we need to do. Anybody have anything else for us? Great. Well, we will adjourn for today and go off live and